Hello everyone and welcome to the last session of this 2 days workshop on astronomy and astrophysics. Our last lecture is by Dr. K.S. Thakre sir and the topic covered by him will be astronomical or optical instruments. Let me introduce you with Dr. K.S. Thakre sir in few words. Dr. K.S. Thakre is an associate professor and head Department of Physics at SPH Mahila College, Malegaon. He has completed his bachelor's and master's degree in physics from Pratap College, Amarner, and he has completed his PhD from Kavaitri Bahinabai Chowdhury, North Maharashtra University, Jalgaon. Dr. K.S. Thakre has completed 18 days National Telescope Making Workshop at Ayuka, Pune in 2001, where he fabricated a 6-inch Newtonian telescope on his own. Dr. K.S. Thakre has also conducted many sky gazing programs for school students as well as college students and public. Now, we will start with this last session of our 2 days workshop on astronomy and astrophysics, that is optical or astronomical instruments. Thank you.
Very good afternoon, everybody. The convener of this workshop, Honorable Principal Gaikwad sir, co-convener Dr. M.K. Devre sir, all the members of organizing committee, and dear participants. Today the topic that is assigned to me is optical instruments. In this talk, I have planned to go through various topics like history of telescopes, optical telescopes, mounts, properties of optical telescopes, radio telescopes, infrared, ultraviolet, X-ray and gamma ray telescopes, Hubble Space Telescope, charge coupled devices, etc. So let us start with what is telescope. The word was coined by this Greek poet in 1611, and as we know, the Greek word telescope means far seeing, because tele is for far and scopian means to see. Optical telescopes allow us to see further because it enables us to collect and focus more light from the distant objects than our eyes can alone. There are two main types of optical telescopes: refractors, also known as dioptrics, and reflectors, known as catoptrics. Refractors use lenses to collect the light, whereas reflectors use mirrors for the purpose. Now, this is the list of various pioneers who have contributed in the development of this field. Hans Lippershey has invented the first refractor or refracting telescope in 1608, wherein he used convex objective and concave eyepiece. The same was corrected by Galileo in 1609 and applied first time to astronomical observations. Johannes Kepler in 1611 explained how the telescopes could be improved, and he suggested both objective and eyepiece to be convex. Christian Huygens, also one of the genius well known for his wave theory and successful explanation of diffraction and polarization, invented compound eyepiece in 1655. Sir Isaac Newton gave another alternative as reflector, much simpler than the former versions of telescopes. He used reflector as a primary mirror and a plain secondary mirror before it. Sir Isaac Newton in 1668 gave another alternative which is relatively much simpler than the previous version. He used the reflector as a primary mirror and a plain secondary mirror before it. Laurent Cassegrain also contributed much in this field. In 1672, he suggested to bore a hole in the primary mirror and put a convex secondary mirror before it so as to give the proper balance of the weight or to the telescope. John Hadley in 1721 replaced the primary by large parabolic mirror. Chester Moore Hall first time used achromatic lens in the objective so as to reduce the chromatic aberrations in 1733. John Dollond gave the commercial touch to the Hall telescopes. Leon Foucault suggested silverizing the mirrors, and until 1932 the mirrors were silverized. After 1932 the another option was aluminizing the mirrors. Ritchey-Chrétien gave another version of Cassegrain reflector. Friends, these are not the only contributors and these are not the only versions of the telescope. So we consider refracting telescopes. Main elements are objective and eyepiece. Objectives collect as much light as possible with maximum resolution, bringing light to focus on focal plane, and eyepiece serves as magnifying lens. Also, as illumination decreases with square of objective focal length, we have to use larger diameter objectives to compensate it, but there are some limitations and problems. So practical limitations are size of the objective and support system. Second practical limitation or problem is construction of a lens free from defects, because lenses suffer from numerous defects like spherical aberration, chromatic aberration, coma, distortion, etc., etc. So that is the serious problem there. Lenses has to be optically perfect and precise, because light has to pass through the lens, and as it encounters two surfaces, both the surfaces are to be optically perfect and precise. Another problem is mechanical problem, that is so far as support system is concerned. A large torque would be produced which requires some compensation. So if you want to use larger diameter objectives, then mechanical problems also become severe. Another problem is low thermal response, because glasses are the bad conductors of heat, so they respond slowly. Therefore, low thermal response is also another problem. Basic principle of a refractor can be seen over here by considering an objective lens and eye lens having corresponding focal lengths FO and FE, and when a parallel beam is incident on the objective lens, it passes through its focus, and a beam of light passing through the focus of eye lens goes parallel to principal axis. So this is basic principle of a refractor. Now another option is reflecting telescope, and it is superior over the refractors. Let us see how it is superior. The first point of superiority is objective lens is replaced by a mirror. As the light is passing through only one surface, or light is reflecting from the surface, only one surface is needed to be ground with great precision. Low weight is another advantage in this system, because honeycomb structure can be developed to support it. Mirror is supported from behind rather than along its edges. So it is quite difficult to support the lens along its edge, and mirror is supported from behind, so this is another advantage. And specially designed pressure pads can also be used to reduce any thermal effects and or gravitational effects. So these are advantages while using the reflecting telescope, but still then list of problems has not reached to end, because while observing the object we have to see into the primary mirror from front side. So observer or a detector obstructs the incident light, and when the detector is of larger size, then it cuts off maximum light. Now Newton has given the solution. He put a small plane mirror in the path and changed the location of prime focus. So he could solve the problem of obstruction of light, but still then another drawback has come over here, and it is of balancing the center of mass of the entire system, because eyepiece or detector is placed at one end and the primary mirror is at another end, and since primary mirror is heavier, so center of mass is near to it, so that problem is there. If detector is massive, it also exerts significant torque. So to solve this problem, Cassegrain has suggested the solution to bore a hole in the primary and use the secondary to reflect the light back through the hole, so that the final light can be observed from back of the primary mirror, and the hole is bored at such an area where the secondary mirror casts its shadow. So technically that part is of no use. That is why a bore can be taken over there so as not to have any loss of incoming light. So that is very intelligent solution. Another advantage of this design is if heavy instrument packages are placed near the with the telescope, then they can be placed near the center of mass of the telescope, and hence support systems are not much disturbed. Another advantage is observer can stay near the bottom of the telescope rather than near the top. Secondary mirror is usually convex here so that effective focal length can be enhanced. Newtonian telescope, its ray diagram is shown over here. So this is reflector, before which a plane mirror is placed at 45 degree with the principal axis of reflector, and an eyepiece is placed at 90 degree with the axis of the telescope, and when a parallel beam is received and the rays follow these paths like this. Herschel telescope is similar to Newtonian telescope. The only difference is that reflector is inclined to incident rays. Classical Cassegrain design contains parabolic primary mirror. We are considering it back for a certain purpose so as to correlate it with the correction in it. So Ritchey-Chrétien duo suggested one suggestion there, and they used hyperbolic primary mirror in place of primary mirror used by Cassegrain design so as to reduce the maximum spherical aberrations. It is almost reduced to zero. If the instrument package is much high, then in that case the light is directed to special laboratory where the detector is located. This is another advancement by this duo. Coud telescopes are generally used where high resolution is the requirement. It contains these various components: the parabolic mirror, then a convex secondary, then plane mirror, then eyepiece, and this is the ray diagram. So extended optical path is the output of this design because it gives rise to enhancement in the resolution. So whenever high resolution work is there, this particular design is the first choice. So this is Coud telescope. Smith Cassegrain telescope can be used as cameras generally, wherein photographic plates are located at the prime focus, and in this particular design the chromatic aberrations are reduced. So the Smith Cassegrain telescope has got this particular ray diagram and elements, and the coma defect is reduced by placing a correcting lens in the path of incoming light just before the reflector. Maksutov designs are also there. They have used convex secondary mirror near the focus of primary mirror. So this is the objective, this is secondary mirror, but a secondary mirror, they are not using secondary mirror, have used the secondary spot instead of entire mirror. He could fold the Cassegrain type of construction by just silverizing the spot on the secondary mirror, and the array diagram is like this. Other versions in Maksutov design are Rutan Maksutov, that abbreviated as RUMAC, and sub-aperture corrector Maksutov Cassegrain design. This is a correcting plate which is used as where the secondary spot is just silverized. Barlow lenses are used for enhancing the effective focal length so as to have deep focusing. So these are all the types of telescopes. Now next what comes is the mechanical structure to hold the telescope, that is mounts. Fixed mounts are there. In this case, a telescope is just to be fixed on a particular surface and pointing up towards the zenith, because you cannot turn it in any direction or about any axis. Fixed altitude mounts, in this case primary optics is fixed at an altitude, because as name is, and able to rotate horizontally in azimuth to cover entire sky, but the limitations are there for observing the objects, because once the altitude is fixed, you would be able to cover a particular strip along the sky. Second option that naturally comes is transit mounts or fixed azimuth mount. In this case, rotating altitude is the option. You can change the altitude, but azimuth is fixed. They are low cost when mass of telescope is the issue, or when you are using smaller eyepiece telescopes. So this is just to refer what the azimuth and altitude directions are. We are just going to recall it. Now another option is the combination alt azimuth mounts. As it is combination, so you can have the option of moving in up and down or side to side separately. Generally amateur astronomers use this because it is inexpensive as well as convenient to use, but there are certain difficulties with this type of mounts. The tracking of a celestial object requires the knowledge of altitude and azimuth. From the object's right ascension and declination, as well as local sidereal time and latitude of the telescope. This altitude and azimuth, or right ascension and declination, are all the coordinates in various coordinate systems used in sky gazing. Another difficulty while using these type of mounts is effect of continuous rotation of image fields, because when image field changes its location, you have to change the direction of your telescopes. Now these systems become complicated when we have to guide the telescope during an extended exposure, because as already we have seen, when the image field changes, so you have to continuously track that particular guiding star or any particular object of your interest, and if you want to expose the telescope for longer time, then you have to focus the telescope for that on that object for longer time, and it becomes complicated. Equatorial mounts incorporate a polar axis aligned to the north celestial pole that appears in Ursa Minor constellation. The telescope has to be rotated about that axis and compensate for changing altitude and azimuth of the object of interest. So one axis is fixed to north celestial pole, and you have to continuously change the altitude and azimuth. Also, it is to be adjusted for both in right ascension and declination. For massive telescopes, the equatorial mounts prove to be extremely expensive and difficult to build. Now moving towards some of the properties of these telescopes. What is resolving power? It is reciprocal of angular separation of two distant objects so that their images will appear just resolved according to Rayleigh criteria. Those who come from physics might be knowing what is Rayleigh criteria, so may be knowing what are the conditions for just resolving and just mixing and just separation and so on and so forth. So resolving power is given by this equation, d divided by 1.22 times lambda, where d is aperture of the telescope and lambda is wavelength under consideration. Another supportive formula for this property is R is equal to 1.22 times f lambda over capital D. Here f is focal length of the primary and R is radius of central bright image. Now central bright image, that means we are to consider the diffraction pattern, and we will be considering central principal maxima on the focal plane, and R is radius of that central bright image. Now to understand what resolving power and for separating two distant objects of 1 arc second apart, what size telescope would be required, this example is sufficient. So for two distant objects 1 arc second apart, we need a telescope having an aperture of at least 13.9 centimeters when we are using the light of wavelength 5500 angstroms. Now 1 arc second means it is the angle subtended at the eye from by two distant objects. So 1 arc second means it is the 60th part of 1 arc minute, and so on and so forth. Thus resolving power increases with aperture diameter, but while we are doing so, spherical aberration also increases appreciably. So there are certain limitations, and limitations are due to increasing the aperture size. When we are trying to increase d, then there are limitations due to atmospheric turbulences, local atmospheric changes like temperature, humidity, and so on and so forth. Therefore they give rise to blurred images and twinkling effect of the stellar images. Now another property is light gathering power. So it is simply the area of incoming light decides the light gathering power. So it is directly proportional to area of incoming light towards the telescope. Next property is magnifying power. ratio of focal length of objective to that of eyepiece, which is also given by the ratio of diameter of the objective to the diameter of eyepiece. Angular separation between two objects resolved by human eye with pupil diameter of 2 mm is about 1 minute of an arc. Now pupil diameter varies from 2 mm to 8 mm maximum. In light condition it is 2 mm and in dark condition it is 8 mm. So most of the telescopes are designed for 8 mm pupil diameter, because we mostly used these telescopes in night or dark time only. The magnification also has certain limit for best observation, and it is 50, after which the images are blurred and fainter. So two telescopes having the same focal length will have same magnifying power but have different resolving power. One having larger aperture has high resolving power than with a smaller aperture. So this is the relationship between magnifying power and the resolving power. Moving towards radio telescopes. In 1931, Karl Jansky, while performing some experiments with Bell Laboratory, come to know that he was receiving some signals from extraterrestrial origin, and by 1935 he strongly concluded that the signals he was receiving are originated from the constellation Sagittarius. It is just near the center of our galaxy, that is Milky Way galaxy. Sagittarius constellation can be easily identified as it has very specific shape like a tea kettle, a handle, a container, a cap, and a outlet pipe like structure so as to get the tea out. So it is very interesting to observe it, and the stars are very prominent, and we can see some patch like structures there, some cloud like structures there, because it is just near the center of the Milky Way galaxy. So he concluded strongly that some extraterrestrial signals or extraterrestrial matter is giving rise to signals received by the radio telescopes, and his work in this field opened the entire new field in observational astronomy. Radio astronomy has been playing an important role in investigating the electromagnetic spectrum and has been providing astronomers the valuable clues for working on the most spectacular phenomenon of nature. The parabolic dishes of a typical radio telescope reflect the radio energy from the source to the antenna. These signals are then amplified, processed, and then radio map of the particular sky at particular wavelength can be produced. The radio telescopes are like very large array located at New Mexico, which contains 27 radio telescopes in movable Y configuration, and it has maximum configuration diameter of 27 kilometers Each dish has diameter of 25 meters and the receivers used are sensitive at a variety of frequencies. So this is the picture which shows very large array. The picture is taken from the Wikipedia. Other plans or other developments by these projects are expanded very large array. The source point source sensitivity of this ELVA, that is first phase project, is about 10 microjansky. 8 new telescopes are located throughout the New Mexico under second phase of development, which has a baseline of up to 350 kilometers and point source sensitivity of 0.6 microjansky. So one can imagine that point source sensitivity has very little improved even by the enormous installations like 8 telescopes and the baseline of 350 kilometers. So this NRAO has these developments. In third phase, it has started operating VLBA, that is very long baseline array. It covers a series of 10 radio telescopes scattered throughout the continental United States, Hawaii Islands, and St. Croix in US Virgin Islands, with maximum baseline of 8,600 kilometers, about 5,000 miles. So these are the developments by NRAO, National Radio Astronomy Observatory. Another development is ALMA, that is Atacama Large Millimeter Array, which is composed of 66 antennas, each of 12 meter diameter, and the effective baseline developed is of 12 kilometers. It is situated at altitude of 5,000 meter in Atacama Desert. This is the specific situation over here, because although the baseline is of only 12 kilometer in length, but the altitude that is reached is 5 kilometers almost in Atacama Desert. Next is IR telescopes. As we know, the primary contributor to infrared absorption is water vapors. So whenever we are working with IR telescopes or IR detectors, we have to see that observations must avoid the water vapors. In 1983, the infrared astronomy satellite, that is IRAS, was placed in an orbit about 900 kilometers high, because we have to go above the Earth obscuring atmosphere, and for that this satellite was placed. IRAS made many important observations concerning nature of the galaxies, and based upon its success, the European Space Agency launched another infrared space observatory, that is ISO, in 1995. The observatory was using the same cooling system as IRAS, and it was targeted to obtain at least 1000 times the resolution of IRAS and for a much longer time to collect the maximum light. But again, the problem appeared there, as already mentioned, that at least a detector has to be cooled, and ISO ceased operating because of problems in the coolant. The most recent and the largest IR observatory was launched, that is Spitzer Space Telescope, named after Lyman Spitzer Jr. It was successfully placed in orbit by 2003. So this is the Spitzer IR telescope. Next one is ultraviolet telescopes. Because of the short wavelength involved, it is very critical to provide a precise reflecting surface. Even Hubble Space Telescope primary mirror has imperfections that prohibited shorter wavelengths from being observed even at theoretical resolution limit. The problem of Hubble Space Telescope, while so far as a primary mirror is considered, a mistake of 2 microns produced the axial spherical aberration of 4 centimeter that was observed. Second problem in this telescopes is glass is opaque to these wavelengths, that is short wavelengths. Therefore, glass lenses are not to be used, and lenses made of crystals provide the appropriate solution for this problem. The International UV Explorer, launched in 1978, proved to be the remarkably productive and durable instrument. Right now, Hubble Space Telescope also provides another important window on UV universe. At even shorter wavelengths, the Extreme UV Explorer made observations between 7 to 76 nanometers. Now all these telescopes are providing us, that is the astronomers, the important information for the study of mass loss from the hot stars or compact objects like white dwarfs and pulsars. Lastly, X-ray and gamma ray telescope. It is to image the sources by using grazing incidence reflections, because as we know, whenever X-ray incidence is considered, it is done by grazing incident situations. In 1970, Small Astronomy Satellite 1 made the first comprehensive survey of X-ray sky. In the late 1970s, the 3 high-energy astrophysical observatories, which included Einstein Observatory, discovered thousands of X-ray and gamma ray sources. Between 1990 and 1999, X-ray Observatory ROSAT, that is Roentgen satellite, investigated hot coronas of stars, supernova remnants, and quasars. Japan's Advanced Satellite for Cosmology and Astrophysics also made valuable X-ray observations in the skies till 2000. Launched in 1999 and named after the Nobel Prize winning Indian born American physicist Subramaniam Chandrasekhar. Chandra X-ray Observatory is the most sensitive X-ray telescope ever built. It is shown in this picture. It is also taken from the Wikipedia. The European Space Agency operates another X-ray telescope launched in the same year, the X-ray Multi-Mirror Newton Observatory. The Compton Gamma Ray Observatory observed the skies at wavelengths shorter than those measured by X-ray telescopes. This CGRO was placed in orbit by the Space Shuttle in 1991 and it could work up to 2000 only. It is shown in the picture, also taken from Wikipedia. Now Hubble Space Telescope, named after Edwin Hubble, has 2.4 meter primary mirror, focal ratio of 1/24, and it is the smoothest mirror ever constructed with no surface imperfections. Longer exposure of 150 hours or more makes the telescope see the object as faint as 30th magnitude. Now we can imagine when we consider two objects, one with magnitude 1 and another with magnitude 2, then the object with magnitude 2 is 2.5 times fainter than the object with magnitude 1. If with this we go up to magnitude 30, we can imagine how fainter the object is with the magnitude 30. So even such objects can be seen by this Hubble Space Telescope, but it requires an exposure for longer time, about 150 hours or more. The optical system used by it operates from 120 nanometer to 1 micrometer and is of Ritchey-Chrétien type. I already have mentioned that the optical system uses Ritchey-Chrétien design. It is to be replaced by James Webb Space Telescope. This James Webb Space Telescope is perhaps still under construction. It has a primary mirror with 6 meter diameter and orbits about gravitationally stable point EL2. It is still under testing. Now this point EL2 lies on the line joining the Earth and the Sun on opposite side of Sun. This point has gravitational stability, that is why it is selected for this JWST to be launched. So this is JWST. In this picture various parts are visible. 18 hexagonal mirrors are designed and they are placed together so as to give rise to single uniform reflector. The primary mirror appears yellow color because it is gold plated. Although the dimensions are too much high, only 3 to 4 gram of gold has been used for plating the 18 hexagonal mirrors, and all these 18 mirrors are not going as they are. While launching, two lines of 3 mirrors on left and 3 mirrors on right side are folded back so as to be accommodated in smaller and smaller space, and later on when it is launched it would unfold so as to get the single primary mirror as a reflector. These are the sunshades. They are also foldable and flexible also. There are 5 layers, 1 2 3 4 5 layers are there, sunshade, so as to protect this mirror from the solar storms and so on and so forth. Different parts are also visible over here. Antenna is there, stabilization flap, scientific instruments are placed right before the primary, and secondary mirror is before the primary. Other projects are LUVOIR, that is Large UV Optical IR Survey, a multi-wavelength observatory. As its name suggests, you can see it runs from ultraviolets through optical, that is visible, and then IR, so it is multiple wavelength observatory. The next project underway is WFIRST, that is Wide Field IR Survey Telescope. It is recently renamed as Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope after NASA's first chief of astronomy. So these are some of the developments, recent developments. And next, CCD cameras. As the name indicates, these are the semiconductor detectors, that is charge coupled devices for counting photons. These are operated with external voltage. When voltage changes, the charges are moved from one device to another device. The devices serve as capacitors, a series of capacitors, and the photons or the electrons generated in the conduction band are shifted from one capacitor to another capacitor, just as series shift registers. Now these charge coupled devices are very much sensitive. We can compare the sensitivity of CCDs with the human eye. When human eye can count 1%, that is 1 photon out of 100 incident photons, photographic plates are able to count slightly more number of photons out of 100 photons incident, whilst CCDs are able to detect nearly 100% of incident photons. So it is almost 100 times sensitive than human eyes, and they are able to detect a wide range of wavelengths from soft X-rays to IR. So it contains almost entire range, so X-rays to IR through visible. CCDs have a wide dynamic range also, so that it can differentiate between very bright and very dim objects that are viewed simultaneously, that too. So these are some of the characteristics of CCD cameras. It works by collecting electrons excited to conduction band when struck by the incident photon, just like photoelectric effect. Number of electrons collected in each pixel is proportional to brightness of the image at the particular location. So these are some of the CCD versions used by Hubble Space Telescope also. So thanks for listening quietly and patiently.